which they say. In other words, this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us that He knows about our internal struggle.
Han Meditation.
Hello guys, I am Han, this is Kelly.
Hi everybody.
We are Han Meditations. We're back with another interesting and exciting video. And this one is very, very interesting for me personally, because this goes on to talk about, we didn't watch it, but just from the title I can tell how Allah knows whenever you're suffering. And, a lot of people think they're alone whenever they're going through certain things in their life, but you're not alone. Not only are other people in the world going through that same thing, but Allah is with you as well. So find somewhere comfortable to sit and watch, and let's get right into it together.
I love you, Allah.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says at the end of Surah Al-Hijr, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jal is saying to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam that indeed and certainly we know that your chest experiences pain and suffering and tightness because of that which they say. In other words, this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us that He knows about our internal struggles. He knows about the pain that we're suffering and the tightness of the chest that we are experiencing. Whether we speak these pains aloud or not, whether you've shared them with someone or not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows very well about them. So if you're experiencing this pain and suffering within your chest, what is the solution? How do you bring peace and tranquility back once again? Listen to the last two ayat in Surah Al-Hijr. Allah Azza wa Jal gives us the medicine. The ayah that follows, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُمْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. Then you shall declare the praise of your Lord. Make tasbih of your Lord. Say Subhanallah. It's as though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, do not forget my mention. Do not forget my dhikr. In the middle of your pain and in your anguish and in your suffering, don't forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Declare His praise. Say Subhanallah, Subhanallah, and keep repeating it for as long as you need, until you feel that contentment and peace and satisfaction once again in your heart, and that your chest and your heart begins to settle once again. فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ. And once you've made tasbih, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, وَكُمْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. And be from among those who make sujood. In other words, get up and pray. Follow your dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with salat. Fall into sajda in the main pillar of as-salat, which is as-sajda, and spend a long time in as-sajda and speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of your anguish and your suffering and your pains in as-sajda. Subhanallah, it is said that when you whisper into the earth, the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's above the heavens, established on His throne, hears you as you whisper into the earth. There was once a man that experienced terrible pains and hardships in his life, and his prayers were all mixed up. He would pray on and off, and everything was just kind of disorganized in his life. So he began to pray all of a sudden, and his prayers were organized. So they asked him, what happened to you? How did you change? And how did you adhere to your prayers on time now? He said to them, I searched for so long, and I did not find anyone on earth that will listen to my pains and my anguish 5 times a day, even though he knows about them, other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he found peace and contentment in his prayer. Allahu Akbar. My brothers and sisters in Islam, every suffering and pain within you, you're supposed to cry it aloud to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the prayer was legislated. That's why at-tasbih was legislated. This is why worships were legislated, so that we speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through them, so that we can tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the worship I'm offering for you. Please, O Allah Azza wa Jal, accept it and give me in replacement peace and tranquility in my life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bi'idhnillah does it. Then Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَاعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ, and worship your Lord until certainty comes to you. And there is nothing more certain than death. In other words, Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying to us, and stay upon the path of righteousness. Don't ever fail and drop from this path, because as long as you're on the path of righteousness, you are in the companionship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He subhanahu wa ta'ala will look after you. Even if you experience hardships and difficulties in life, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows them, and He'll make you go through them bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and He'll compensate you with huge and great reward subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life and in the next. The surah that's after is Surah Al-Nahl. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, Ata amrullah, that the command of Allah is about to come. The day of judgment is about to come. This ayah is encouraging us to remain steadfast upon the path, because the hour is close, the hour is around the corner. My brothers and sisters in Islam, take the time that you have left on earth seriously. Worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seriously, and honor Allah Azza wa Jal in your life the way He deserves to be honored. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our prayers and our worship, and to keep us steadfast upon the path of Islam until we meet Him subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Wow. I mean, every time we listen to one of these stories, it's just, it's fascinating, because, you know, you're thinking about, whenever I'm watching this stuff, I'm thinking about all of the stuff that I've learned, whether it's, you know, through spirituality, other religions, or whatever it is. And, you know, it really does seem like Islam is starting to connect all of those dots for me, where even as it says, you know, speak to, I believe it said, when you whisper to the earth, God can hear you even more clearly. And, you know, grounding yourself in the earth, and letting those vibrations, those, you know, because grounding is real. And you actually do feel something whenever your feet are on the ground, and whenever you're, you know, especially if you're praying on the ground, or you're just close to the ground, you're closer to life, essentially. This is the planet that we live on. So whenever you're feeling down and out, and you're praying to the ground, and you're whispering to the ground, and God can hear you even better, it almost seems like it's a more pure experience than whenever you're inside in a house, you know, surrounded by plastic and foreign metals, and, you know, just different
Man-made
stuff that's
items.
Yeah, exactly, Kelly. Man-made, mass-produced man-made items, factory-made items. So, you know, it really is just because those are made by man. The earth is made by God.
Right.
So whenever you're on God's creation, and you're whispering and talking to it, and as you said, only God is the only person that would hear. That is just, that's intense. What did you think, Kelly?
Yeah, honestly, I have to tell you, this was a really eye-opening video for me, and I really was not expecting that, you know, but it's pretty much just the way it approached with, like, the mindset and the attitude, essentially, of looking at praying 5 times a day. And it really goes to show you that everything in life is about your perspective and the attitude. And that is something that you have control over. You know, you can look at things in a good way or a bad way. You can find something to be grateful for or something to think negatively about anything. And, you know, I myself was thinking about the 5 prayers a day. You know, I don't even know how to do them perfectly, but I saw them as something that's just like kind of good to engrave into your daily practice, really good discipline, and of course helps you connect to God. But I always kind of just kept thinking of like the parts that I do know of the prayer and kind of saying like, you know, keep me on the straight path. You are the only one worthy of worship. You know, you're the greatest and all that. But I mean, of course, I'm just still a beginner learner, but I never really thought of the perspective of like, wow, who else will can you take time 5 times a day, and they will be there to listen. Even if you want to say the same thing, the hardships over and over and again, you just want to let it out. Like, I never even thought about that, and it is so true. Like, it doesn't have to be this thing where it's like, oh yeah, I have to do my prayer and I have to do this. Like, no, it's you get to pray, you know, and you get to have these moments. And yeah, you can speak about things that are bothering you. It doesn't just have to be like, oh, I'm, you know, trying to do the right thing and whatever. Like, you can just talk about whatever's on your mind. And how beautiful is that we even get a relationship like that with the one almighty Allah.
Wow, that's beautiful, because like you said, Akila, you get to do it. And, you know, I always say to do things that you hate like you love it.
Right.
Because that's going to really flip your mind. And, you know, it's not bad to think like, oh, I have to pray, you know, but once you think that, flip it in your brain to think, you know, I love to pray. I'm talking to God. I'm getting as close as I can possibly, you know, to the Most High. And that's the most important thing. So let us know what you guys thought about this video, guys. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing the video. Thank you to everyone who's ever donated, even if it's $1, 1 cent, it doesn't matter. We love you guys so much, and we'll see you in the next video.